Hey guys, today I'm going to be painting the Dragonfly Shinto from Rising Sun. This is actually a Patreon voted miniature, so on Patreon we've been painting through the Dragonfly clan, and really they've been able to pick what miniatures I paint in what order. And so first was the Daimyo, and now is the Shinto. I believe they're just picking the hardest miniatures and then going down from there, so I have to, try hard right up front. But no, they've picked great, and I've really enjoyed this. This is actually one of the main reasons I backed Rising Sun. I think this miniature is so cool and unique and interesting, and all around really like it. So in this one, I'm doing things a little bit differently in that I've tried to include my patron members as much as possible when it comes to color choices, when it comes to techniques used, and when it comes to overall style. So there's been lots of votes on it about how bright I painted, whether it's my normal or whether it's not. Either way, I'm showing the miniature here with the concept art just to kind of give you a sense of the matching here, and also kind of the finished result, so you can see where we're going. So as I'm going through this, you kind of see where I'm headed, and I can explain how we got here. So without further ado, I'm going to explain kind of the intricacies during the actual process of painting, so let's get right into it. Okay, so to start things out, we have a little bit of a bent sword. Now, Cool Mini or Not does a kind of a softer PVC, but not too bad. It gets good detail, but every now and then you get bent weapons because they don't use like ABS or anything like that in those. So tiny bit of a bent here. That's really hot water. It's steaming but not boiling, and what that does is it makes the plastic kind of not melt down but become malleable, and ideally it takes on its mold shape automatically because it just got bent in shipping. Either way, you put it back to where it goes, put it in the cold water, that freezes it up, thumbs up, good to go. Then I am priming in gray, so it is primed, so we're going to go into that, and then start right on oak brown on the feathers. Now, before I talk about the oak brown and the feathers, you might notice I missed a step here. I'm not omitting it from the video, I simply didn't do it. So normally I show every prep step that I take, so I don't wash my miniatures or anything like that, but I did have to unbend some of the swords there, and I normally trim the mold lines or flash that you find from the actual mold process when they make these. I did not do that here, and I didn't do it because I thought I already had, not because I forgot. I literally thought I already had, even after priming. So sometimes after you prime it you can see them better. I just didn't notice. That's because normally you can see it on the base or on the front, and so here I am painting, and it's just not that noticeable. There is one line on some of the miniatures, you'll see it later on, because I don't think I always pick up the correct one. I'm only going to show you me painting one of them, not everything 3 times, so don't have to worry about that. But either way, very non-noticeable. I'm actually pretty impressed. It's the least amount I've ever seen on any miniature. I wish I'd still done it on the back of the wings. On the other ones, you'll see that later, but, too late for that, I suppose. I wasn't going to redo everything. Either way, this oak brown works really good. It's a great base color, and I'm using the Winsor Newton Series 7 number 1 brush here. If you recall, I bought that with the Patreon money last month just to try them out, see if I liked them, see if I recommended them, and so far it is a yes. I do recommend them. They are nice. If you're fine spending a little bit more, it's not that much more. So Army Painters are great brushes, and you get a really good solid 3-pack for the most wanted that I use all the time. Highly recommend. But these Winsor Newtons are holding their tip longer during a paint session, so sometimes I have to really clean it afterwards, with the kind of soap and shampoo, and I don't have to do that nearly as much, and I think the tip is a bit finer, especially over prolonged use, so really happy with it. This is an Agrax Earthshade wash. I'm using the Regiment brush on here because the washes come in pots in Citadel, and I dislike pots. I tend to, maybe accidentally put my brush in too much, and I don't want to get anything in the ferrule of the Winsor Newton. So using the Regiment brush here still works fine, obviously, especially for wash. You will notice that I don't think it shows up as much as I would like. So you might want to do a Nuln oil, or you might want to do a, this is at dry, so you can kind of see how much it showed up, or a 50-50 Nuln oil and Agrax Earthshade mix. Either way, a dark brown, maybe even a black, I think would show up a little bit better. I'm going to highlight it up so it's fine, and it's just super shallow in texture on the feathers, and so you need a stark contrast, and the oak brown is already so dark. Now, you notice I'm dry brushing here, and I already showed that I'm adding white. I'm not going straight to the oak brown, because there's not much of a color difference, so the oak brown dry brushing would show almost nothing. So I've added a little bit of white here, and this is the only time I'm dry brushing on the miniature. It's just to kind of bring up that base color, give it a little bit more definition, because I wasn't super happy with the wash contrast here, and this will give me that, so I'll have deeper shadows now. Okay, so now I'm taking that same kind of lightened ochre brown and I'm painting it directly on specific feathers. Now the reason I'm doing this is because if you go back to the concept art, you notice that these are not naturally blue feathers. It's not like, you know, he like defeathered a peacock or something, right? This is regular brown feathers that have been painted blue on the back. And so I kind of want this painted look. Now to do that, at this point especially, I wasn't decided on whether or not I was going to do a wash. So the way I do an OSL effect typically is you highlight to something to an extreme amount and then put a colored wash on it, and it mainly colors that highlighted portion, leaving the rest kind of just slightly, so it naturally blends it. However, the the Drakenhof blue wouldn't be a good fit, and so I invariably just decided just to paint it on. So I'm adding more white now, giving it an extreme highlight. Again, really just painting everything that I will turn blue. I'm going to change this later on, and I'll explain that at the time. But for now, this is kind of my methodology, because again, I'm trying to not make it look super natural, but instead just purposely painted feathers, right? So in fact, some feathers are stop halfway. Okay, so now to actually paint the feathers with paint. So gray blue, and by the way, it's super easy to make it look like you purposely painted it by purposely painting it. It's not too hard. And I'm mainly just coloring in everything with one coat as I highlighted. Because it's so highlighted up, it keeps its color really well. I don't have to worry about it, you know, showing too much dark brown underneath, because it is so bright at this point. And it's really easy just to kind of take your time here. Each one's super defined. It's easy and nice. Yeah, overall pretty nice. I like this. Just make sure you cover all the highlight. If you don't, it'll show next to the blue, because they are quite different colors still. But this gave it a very nice kind of drastic painted effect. Okay, so now we have oak brown. Again, this is actually still that highlighted oak brown. I just didn't, we swapped from gray blue to oak brown, so just showing that. But this is the highlighted oak brown. I never go back to the straight oak brown. And this is to now paint the tips, especially where the light, I think, would, reflect off the feathers. I think feathers have a slight, reflective property. And also over here, just on the tips that are upturned, first of all, I think it looks nice, adds a lot of definition, and I still think it would kind of reflect it a bit. So where it scoops up there, and then at the ends of most of the feathers, about 80%. I'm not doing all of them, I'm just doing about 80% kind of haphazardly, or ones that are definitely upturned. And this, I think, adds a whole lot. Well worth it. I understand you could and are tempted just to dry brush this completely. So right there where it kind of folds up, where his back is, where his legs are bent up, highlighting that extremely, and then just, again, the tips as well. It adds a whole lot to the miniature, and really, I think, sets it up really nicely. So highly suggested to do that. Don't forget the head feathers. I'm going to go ahead and do the top, even though it's going to end up in red. Okay, and light green blue. This is for his kind of tunic shirt that he has going on here. So again, if you go back to the concept art, it almost looks like a tinted white. And Adrian Smith, amazing artist, but he does very stylized paintings that, or pictures that, first of all, don't necessarily match feasibility when it comes to painting stuff. I'll get more on that later as well. But also, he uses color and highlights to, I think, set moods a lot too. I came across this in Blood Rage, especially with like the Valkyrie and stuff like that. But either way, I think it's kind of a muted, greenish blue, but a very light color. And so this light green blue from Vallejo, I think, is perfect for it. I think it really ends up well, especially with a slight wash that you almost completely cover. So again, just make sure you get all the straps. So these feather things are strapped to his arms, and there's little bits of shirt sticking out here. And again, it's really close to the gray. If I primed it a different color, you'd see it more, but trust me, it's there. Alright, next up is ochre brown. This is going to be the base color of the pants. So it says ochre brown. I wouldn't really call it a brown, though. I consider it more of an orange. Or at least, yeah, to me it's an orange. I'm actually slightly colorblind. I don't know if you knew that or not. And actually, I kind of struggle with blues and oranges. Funny enough. Not that I don't see them, just certain hues or certain colors look the same to me. Like if I look at an HTML chart, for instance, I'll see big swatches that I think are all the same color, but I guess supposedly they're not. Anyway, to me it looks like an orange, though it's called ochre brown, and Again, great base coat for this. He does have a little bit going over his feet. You could probably just paint the feet. Don't be super concerned about the heels, but also it's so defined, you don't really need to. To get inside there, by the way, again, that hobby holder did get in the way, so to really get under there, I kind of have to take it off there real quick. Okay, and Orange Fire. So he actually has a wrap. I actually missed this at first, and only noticed it after I initially made my paint list. But he has a wrap here that does look to be a different color. It's a much darker orange, kind of around his abdomen. At first I thought it might just be the pants going all the way up there, which would be kind of weird, but whatever. Maybe some people wear them high. But no, it looks like a wrap. Definitely a different color, even in the concept art. And this orange, I think, works really well for it. It's also a good splash of color. Okay, now I'm taking Seraphim Sepia to almost everything. So I'm going to take it to his kind of tunic, shirt, whatever. I'm going to put it on the pants. I'm going to put it on the wrap, so it's going over everything. Actually, I'm going to use this more later, but I wanted to, first of all, finish these portions before I went too much farther, and the other portion is going to be one of the last things I do, and I wanted to use these while I had the colors. I have my colors on a wet palette, so I'm not too concerned about it. Speaking of which, I did buy a new wet palette, a Stay Wet palette. I've seen other painters use it. It's fantastic. I really like it. It has really shallow sides and a sponge. You may have seen it in my previous video, actually. It's yellow. You probably saw it in the background. Really good. I really like it. I'll have a link to in the description below for it so you can check it out. Super inexpensive. Again, really good. But don't use the paper that it comes with. Instead, use the the normal parchment paper that us painters use in our custom wet palettes. But it's replaced my custom wet palette. It's really nice. So this is, again, just adding a little, the color back, essentially, and just going for the highlights. Now, right here on his shins, there is texture on the back leg, but not this upturned leg. There's almost no texture there. It's all lost. So I'm kind of just painting lines to give it the illusion of texture. But it's all freehand on that other leg. The back leg's good, though. Okay, and adding white to add a more extreme highlight. Now, I'm actually going to blend this in later, kind of like I did on my Bane video for Monolith's Batman Gotham City Chronicles. So feel free to see that in action over there if you're also concerned about this. But essentially, you add a bit of an extreme highlight as your final highlight, and then you tone it down with a very watered down, darker version of the color. And what it does is it kind of blends it all together. It slightly brightens up everything else and slightly puts the bright color down. I really like it because I've had success with it in the past, and I'm very much able to see where my highlights or my final highlights are going to go without having to worry about percentages and continued coverage changes. So here's that ochre brown again, just watered down a lot. So it's almost a glaze at this point. And as you can see, it just dilutes those extreme highlights, though I can still keep an edge highlight if desired, if I want it like on that upturned portion there on his knee. And then otherwise it blends the rest of it. It works really well. I love this technique. It works well for me. I mean, do what works for you, but I enjoy doing this more than multiple highlights. This was only 2, and I feel like I'm getting 3's worth out of it. Okay, next is a light green blue. We're going to start highlighting this one as well. Now, if you notice on this portion of the tunic right here, on this portion of the tunic, it really shadows a lot. That Seraphim Sepia definitely sets there a little bit. And so what I do, first of all, also, don't ever load your brush up that much for a highlight. I don't know what I was doing. That's crazy talk there. Crazy painting. Anyway, I'm just going to spread it around with a dry brush now, which technically, I think that's 2-brush technique. Did I just do the 2-brush blending? I think I totally did. 2-brush blending, by the way, is where you have 2 brushes, one dry, one loaded with paint. You lay the paint down, and then you swap to the dry brush, and then feather it out and move that paint around with the dry one. Anyway, as you can see, I kind of covered up the shadow a little bit. I'm going to play around with that a little bit more off camera, just to kind of bring it up a little bit with some very, very light highlights, just to paint in that kind of extreme shadow there that I don't think belongs. But again, it's just basic blending. It's not too bad. Otherwise, you're just catching the ridges. Definitely get each one of the portions of the shirt in between the robes, even if you don't think it would. It really makes it stand out. Okay, adding white, again, for that kind of second level highlight. I typically do 2 levels of highlight. I might do one extreme and then blend it. to kind of give the illusion of 3. But I think 2 highlights is good for just about anything we're doing here. Anything I'm certainly capable of putting my name on. And again, I think it turns out great. You can always, again, pop out those colors more if you choose. So my vote, by the way, was if I should paint at my normal kind of, I tend to paint dark, at my normal level, or whether I should try to either just pop out the highlights, or whether I should just make it brighter. And it was split about half and half, with half the, again, this is just Orange Fire, just to bring it back, I don't highlight this. Orange Fire plus Seraphim Sepia works great. Half the people said keep it as is, the other half was mixed in between the other 2 options. Okay, now while I just kind of essentially went for mostly what I would normally do here, it was split half and half, so I just decided to match everything else. I did take this this feedback as well, so I showed a preview, this is a day later, and bandaging, actually, he runs another YouTube channel that's great, you should check him out. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below, why not? Anyway, he's a patron of mine and suggested I try to blend these in a little bit. I kind of talked back and forth about how I wanted them to look kind of painted on, and he brought up the good point that even if you paint them on, it's not going to be a hard line, it's still going to kind of get everywhere, especially with the feathers moving. So this is me with a very watered down version of that gray blue, just kind of hand bringing it down. It's not on the highlighted portions, on the brown, so it's going to be a little bit darker, and I'm doing it lightly. And that little bit makes it blend just enough to where it still doesn't necessarily look like they're supposed to be blue, especially with the brown shadows. But enough to where it's not so drastic and stark. Definitely a positive change, so thanks for that feedback. I think it turned out really well. Well, I hope you did too. Maybe I didn't blend it as much. You can yell at me personally in the comments. You probably will, right after saying first. You tend to click on these pretty quick. Okay, anyway, enough personal messages in this video. This is leather brown. I have only used leather brown twice and never for leather. I don't know what this says about me or about the naming of the color, or I'm not sure. But either way, this is for his holders. Now, if you look back in the concept art, the holders for the feathers looks to be about the same color. This is a one time where I'm kind of fudging it a bit. I'm not going to have it the same color, but fairly close after a wash. And I'm not going to highlight it up at all to keep it kind of dark, and because the detail here is kind of iffy, and so I didn't want to kind of have to, fight with it. But either way, this will help kind of pop out and show that these are, holding, holders that he has strapped to him, as opposed to maybe just part of the feathers. Because they're so dark, especially at tabletop distance, it's just going to look dark unless I do something a little bit more drastic. So Seraphim Sepia, a light brown wash. You could go darker if you want, but I'm just doing, a light one. Now notice that this time I am using my Winsor Newton. This is the 000, and I'm just getting a little bit to really get these details. It flowed perfectly on this, by the way. This was no problem with this tiny detail. And because the belly isn't super big on this brush, it doesn't hold a whole lot, which is great because I don't want to touch the miniature and have a whole bunch just gob down on it. So really happy with that. Burnt red, love these dark reds, so anytime I can get anything like burnt red out, I enjoyed, just for the hilt though. Now the pommel is actually gold, and it does have a shape, but it's only really noticeable on this one I'm painting now. On the other one, the detail's lost, and so you're gonna have to paint the gold on your own. Necromancer's Cloak. We're getting into kind of the quick little splashes of color here. The Necromancer's Cloak is only for his nose, and even then, only the top portion of his nose. It goes all the way up to the bridge where his eyes start, so you can just kind of paint it all the way in there. Okay, next up, Dragon Red, a little bit of a different red, and this is going to be for all the rope, the belt, and then the ropes around his, or his, whatever they're, I guess they're ropes. Anyway, they're on his legs. Probably to keep it from being so poofy down there. It looks like it's the same clothes, the same pants, but they're kind of poofy on top and not on the bottom. And then I'm also bringing it up here for the design, both the trim on the mouth, there's a little bit on the forehead, and then I'm going to bring it back into his feathers up there as well. But I'll do that at the end, mainly because I don't know if it's going to mess up the tip, and I'll have to clean the brush. So I'm going to paint in this belt first here. Okay, so here's on here. I'm not going to wet blend it. I thought about it, but again, I don't think they're natural red feathers mixed in here. I think it's still paint. Really there's this one on either side right above the eye. It's not in the middle. But if I just paint it really dark in the middle and then just kind of feather it out and don't reload the brush, notice I did not reload the brush, I think it works out really well and just kind of blends on its own. Okay, Agrax Earthshade on the Dragon Red for the ropes alone, not the trim on the head or anything like that. This is just on the ropes to give it that definition. I'm not going to highlight it up, this is just to darken it down. Mechanicus Standard Gray, just real quick splash of highlight on his nose just to make it look a little bit like a sheen. It's not really non-metallic metal or anything like that. It's just there to kind of give it its shape. It kind of needs it a little bit. There's not a whole lot of detail up here. Okay, Old Gold. I don't think ever been able to use this, but I've wanted to. It's a very muted and dark gold, but it's very glittery, if that makes any sense. It's a darker color, but super glittery, but it covers really well. I only had to put one coat on it, which I was very happy with. A lot of times on gold, you'll see a lot of the gray come through it when it's properly watered down, and so it takes multiple coats. This did not. I am avoiding those eyes. They are not the gold color, and I don't want to paint over metallic paints. Additionally, they're going to go on the pommel, which again, you just have to paint on this one, and the kind of guards, the guards there as well. But yeah, I really like this color. It's really nice, and I'm going to keep it diluted. A coworker of mine said that he would have brought it up. You could, I think you would have had to do a different gold to do that. Don't forget the necklace here, especially the sides. You'll see me paint the sides. I think that's very important. You're not going to always see it from the front. So right here. So it is what it is. So here's that ochre brown again, and now I'm doing the eyes. I wouldn't suggest, maybe paint the pants later if you want, but I wouldn't suggest painting this and then the gold around it. Definitely paint this afterwards. But they're popped out, so they show up really well. Didn't even have to fix them up, very easy. Then I'm having Seraphim Sepia, and again covering the eyes plus the gold. And so I'm just going to kind of quickly put that on there. I do not brighten it up, so it is what it is. It's not going to be highlighted in any way. It may have popped out some of the texture, maybe the hilt and the necklace. I don't know, undecided. You would have had to get a regular gold out. Real quick, Abaddon Black for the inside of the eyes. There is, as you can see right there, a spot there just ready to hold the paint. Super easy to do. Just stick a good point in there with some black, shows up perfect. Okay, we are moving quick. Basic skin tone is out for his hands, and he has a little bit on his neck as well that's showing, and then his feet. I don't actually put a wash on this at all. I think his hands especially have great texture and show up perfectly. His feet, not so much, but not only are they not the focus of the miniature, but because there's no real definition there, I would have had to paint on the toes more. The toes are there, but not enough for a wash to show. So I just left it as is. It's a good color anyway, and I think it ends up well. This right here, though, really hard. By all means, paint that ahead of time. In fact, I would at least the neck. I wouldn't worry about the hands or anything until after the hilts, but that neck is so hard to get to. I had to touch it up. There was no way. In fact, looking at the final video and the close-up, I missed a few spots. Also, real quick, I just realized this is different lighting. I'm sure you've noticed that. It's much more daylight. It's more true to how you actually see the miniature. The other one was very washed out ring light for photography. So let me know if the lighting, if you noticed it, if you like it more, if you like it worse, if it's better. Yeah, just let me know. I bought these from IKEA, and I think they work great. I'll go ahead and link to those below as well in case you're interested, because they're great little desk lamps. They're super cheap. They're like 18 bucks a pop. And they're LED as well. They're just more of a yellow hue, but this is much closer to what it actually looks like. It's not all washed out. I can't use that excuse anymore. Anyway, hope you like that change. It's a lot easier to paint for me, that's for sure. Much easier. Okay, so that was Stormhost Silver, and I again just painted the two blades here. Stormhost Silver is a very bright silver, so I have to darken it down instead of brightening it up. So I have Nuln Oil here, and I'm faking a non-metallic metal technique. I'm slightly darkening the kind of opposing side, so it looks almost like a checkerboard on it, right? And it's supposed to just show kind of the reflectiveness, except on this one I'm just painting the bottom of it. Good practice for me. I'm not doing non-metallic metal quite yet. I'm certainly not comfortable with it, but I think it turned out pretty okay instead of just doing one side. Let me know. Okay, this is Dorn Yellow, which is an edge color. I don't even know if they sell this anymore from Citadel. It's essentially one of their yellows mixed with a whole lot of white. But I'm fine with that. It does it for me. If you recall, the concept art has this impossibly detailed design that I'm just trying to emulate here, and again just kind of add a little bit. The problem is it's on the part of the pants that have those, not only the beautiful highlights, but also is all rippled. It's not straight, and so drawing these lines is incredibly hard. I think it did an okay job. I think it definitely adds a lot to the miniature. It doesn't make it look nearly as plain, and again, always good freehand practice. So yeah, I was pretty happy with it. I'm not going to do all of it. He has Adrian Smith draws on almost all the pants, but that's excessive, and as far as I know, impossible to really paint well without like maybe masking it off and, you know, airbrushing, or I don't know, something fancy that I'm not going to do. This is just a Monster Brown. This is going to be the exact same type of basing that I did for the Daimyo for the Dragonfly. So if you've seen that, you've seen this one. This is Void Shield Blue. This is their clan color. All the rooms are going to have that. However, it was brought to my attention that there is a better way, or at least a kind of a nice way to do the rims here instead of kind of the poker chip, and that is with this white here. So I'm just going to draw a line across the bottom. Now, theoretically, that's fine. I feel I could do a pretty good straight line, and from a distance it looks perfect. Up close it looks almost perfect, but not quite. So two things. First of all, if you want it less than half, I think there's a better way to do it. You just put the edge of your brush on the bottom rim, and kind of like what you do in edge highlight, I think it would work perfect that way. Additionally, Cool Mini or Not doesn't always have straight bases. If you notice, this base is super curved, and so you're kind of working on a non-flat surface, which is kind of odd. But either way, I think it shows up really nice. Alright, now we are on to varnishing. So this is a Citadel's matte varnish. So now that it is varnished, I now have Tester's Gloss Coat brush on, and I'm just brushing that onto these blades, and I'll brush it onto the gold portions as well, just again to give it a little bit of a shine after the matte varnish. It won't be as shiny as straight up gloss. I don't want it super shiny, but just a little bit. Alright, so now I have these meadow flowers from the Army Painter that again I used on the Daimyo, but the Daimyo had enough base really for the whole one. I don't feel like these really do. It look a little crowded, so I'm going to cut it. Now, the best way to cut it is definitely to hold it in your hand and then step... No, okay, never mind, not going to do that. But I did think about it. Scissors might work better here, but I always have these laying around, so I misuse these all the time. Either way, cutting them in half and just using half of each. So I have one extra half one now, because I only need 3. Adding good old Elmer's glue. This is just the normal PVA glue that, you know, the white glue or whatever it is called, wherever it is you live. Just be sure to throw the miniature down on the table after you're done. That always helps. Anyway, I have this, you know, a little crappy brush I'm going to spread around. I should have used a toothpick. I prefer using a toothpick for this, just because the brush, you know, gets loaded more, I feel, and the toothpick spreads it around more. I don't know, whatever. It's what I'm used to. Again, just throw the mini down on the ground. Super helps here. Just make sure to kind of give a fairly decent layer. You want to see white, not really a whole lot of brown here. Then, I'm not even going to do a cut here, so I'm going to add that in there, and I use the knife to press down in the middle to kind of fit it in there. And then, as it's drying, this green grass, again from Army Painter, it's their kind of fine flock, just throw it on there, it'll cover it up, and also help prop up those meadow flowers. Now, this is the Patreon video, so before you see the final thing, I want to do a shout out to some pictures that have been sent to me. So this is from the user Jean Nicholas, and he and his 5-year-old watch my channel all the time. First of all, I get really tickled from that. That is awesome. That is so cool to know that, you know, multiple people or families are actually enjoying my videos. You have no idea what that feels like. It's really cool. Anyway, his 5-year-old painted the one on the left. Like, no joke. That is better than my first ones when I was a teenager. That's better than some of mine even on this channel. As far as I'm concerned, great job. That kid is going to be something. I don't know if it'll be a painter, but he's going to be something. So well done there. Good job for that. And you know what? His father's no slouch either. So this is his kind of Oni, and he used the Vallejo asphalt texture, and after seeing this, I want it. Those look like sweet waves to me. Like that would look great on like the River Dragon, right? I think it would. Anyway, looks great. Good dry brush use here, good paint choices all around. Really impressed with the texture and the flow. I can never manipulate, by the way, the textures that well, so I just scrape it on there. I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but people go way fancier than me. Anyway, great job here. Also, very good. Thanks for sending those in, by the way. If you ever want me to kind of give feedback or, you know, just say, hey, good job, send me the pictures of your minis. I love seeing them. They're great. And now we are finally to the end. This is all 3 of them, all painted up on the turntable and all of their glory and that super bright light as much as I can throw at them so you can see every little detail and mess up that I did. I'm really happy with how these guys turned out, by the way. I think they look great, especially right next to the daimyo. Probably should have thrown him in here. Oh well. When I'm done, I will do a turntable with the entire clan. So you can see the whole clan painted, thanks to my patrons. So speaking of patrons, thanks so much for everybody that's either showing up here and just all of your guys' support. Thank you so much. I always appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I really enjoy talking with you. I enjoy seeing what you're painting. I enjoy hearing what your thoughts are on either upcoming content from me or just work in progress pictures or anything like that I throw on there. I can't wait to show the new office to you guys. So that'll be the start of next month. I'll probably film that. You can kind of see the beginnings of hopefully something kind of great. Either way, thanks so much for your views and your likes and your comments and your support. And I will talk to you guys again soon.